Welcome back to the Seriously Don't Do That podcast. I'm Dan Griffith, your host. I'm the president of Grow with Dan, and tonight's Don't Do That, or DDT, is Don't Rely on Procurement. Good evening, David.
Good evening. So, if you're in sales, don't you want to start with procurement, the people in charge of buying?
Well, actually, no. The only exception to that would be if you're selling some type of a commodity. For instance, you're selling paper goods to the federal government. That might be the only way you could sell. But when I think about software sales or even durable goods or capital equipment, you're really selling to the person in the organization that needs what you do. And very, very rarely, if ever, do they rely in, or do they sit in procurement. Now, there are some of you that probably sell to procurement and sell solutions, and obviously this advice on not relying on procurement would not apply to you. But as a rule, we don't rely on procurement because we're relying on the people that actually need the solution that we have, and we're going and talking to them.
So I started my sale with the group who needed my product, but now I'm stalled in procurement. What should I do?
Well, it's a common thing, which is I think some of this can be addressed even well prior to a deal or a opportunity moving to procurement. First thing is really just to understand what the process is for the organizations, and organizations vary wildly. Also, they vary widely in how they purchase different types of goods. But when something stalls in procurement, I always recommend, not only to my reps, but folks that I advised over the years, that they go back to the stakeholder who has the vested interest in buying that product. Because if it doesn't get done, they're the one that's going to be the most upset. And secondly, I tell you to think about what procurement's role in this is. Many times it's to get a little bit lower price. Sometimes it's to follow and check off a list, but their view is really only until it gets off of their desk. Your stakeholder obviously is going to be for a much longer time. So getting them back involved oftentimes can get a deal moving or back on track. I mentioned earlier about price. I would strongly recommend that as you talk with your stakeholder, if you know that procurement is going to ask for an additional 5%, that you voice that with your stakeholder in the business and understand from them what that percentage is and stack that in at the very beginning. And then finally, don't ever give without taking. And again, not great life advice, but as you're negotiating with the procurement organization, they're going to ask for something. And every time they ask, you need to make an ask as well. It's how we work to a win-win relationship. And many times it helps us get down to the things that are most important in procuring an item. Now, I'm sure I'm going to make a lot of procurement people unhappy, and I think procurement are great. Matter of fact, those of you in procurement would be surprised to know that I actually started my career in procurement. So I'm not criticizing you or the job you have to do, but I have to realize that as salespeople, we have a job that we need to get done, and we want to work towards that goal. So in the show notes, you'll have a place to send your hate mail to me. But until next time, be well and grow. This week on the Seriously Don't Do That podcast, we're going to talk about why you shouldn't do a demo for every prospect.